Hi everyone, my name is Emma. Thank you so much for joining me today. A little about me, I've been in the industry for 5 years, specializing in both cut and color, and I'm behind the chair in Hoboken, New Jersey. This is my beautiful salon, and this is my model, my roommate, Lauren. And I've been doing her hair since we've lived together, so we've definitely done a bunch of different things, but as you can see, her hair is this most beautiful, strawberry coppery color, and we've been playing with it. I think this really showcases her personality, so that's the best part about color. As much as I love cutting, color definitely has my heart. I feel like you can do so much with it, you can have so much fun, it's really versatile, and you can really just play with it with your client. So I think color is such a collaborative thing. I'm gonna explain to you what we're doing today. So basically, we're doing a dimensional tint. So to me, that means root application, a few dimensional lowlights, and then a global gloss. I know it sounds like a little complicated, so I'm gonna break it down and we're gonna do it step by step. So today on Lauren, we're gonna do her root. We've been doing this, this strawberry color for a hot minute now, and we're gonna richen her up, add a little bit more red. So I'm gonna do her root application with L'Oreal's McJury. And why I'm choosing that is because you can see her base is like a 6-7, and we're gonna use McJury to lift her. So you don't always need to grab the lightener. You can work with what you have and use permanent to lift. We're really not lifting her too much, so this is the perfect opportunity to play with what you have. We're gonna do her root, and then I'm gonna drag a few low light pieces using that same formula throughout her mids just to break this up and add some dimension. And then while that processes, we're gonna mix up her global gloss, which is just gonna enhance what she already has. So we're using some of her lighter pieces and using that sort of as a highlight just to give it a nice little pop. Again, this service is super customizable, which is the really cool part. So let's say you have a blonde and they wanna transition during the colder months to be more of like a lived-in blonde. You know, we all have those clients who just box dye their hair and want us to be magicians and make them blonde again. Well, this is the service for them because they're gonna feel a little bit more lived in, a little darker, while still keeping some of their natural lighter pieces, and then making it easier for both of you once they wanna be blonde again, because you know that always happens. This service is super customizable. You can play with the product you're using, the placement, literally all of it is just pieces that you can use. So I hope that you're able to use this technique to transform your client behind the chair. Let's get into it. We're gonna be using 20 volume to lift our client's natural and then deposit using these tones. So what I'm using is a mix of 8-3, this is a level 8 with a gold reflect, and then 6-4-6, this is a level 6 with a copper red reflect. And I'm gonna mix them together to be somewhere around a level 7. I'm gonna do equal parts with 20 volume. Our model's natural is about a 6-7, so we really don't need to lift that much. If we were to use 30 volume or anything higher, we might get a hot root just because we're lifting too much, which we really don't need. So again, we're gonna be using permanent color to lift our model's natural, and then we're depositing with the tonal reflect. So let's mix up. I typically like to do about 50 grams per head. If you do anything more than that, you can also upcharge them for an extra bowl, and that'll be good for your ticket. So about 25 and 25. And then the ratio for McJury is equal parts. So since I have 50 grams total of color, I'm gonna use 50 grams total of developer, giving me 100 grams total for the entire head. Okay, so I'm just setting my client up. I like to have a towel underneath before I even start the color application, just because then I won't have to do that once the color is already on her head. It just gets a little messy. So I mixed up McJury 8-3 and 6-4-6 to create a 7, and I used 20 volume. This is just gonna lift her slightly and then enhance what she already has. So since this is permanent color, I like to just go around her hairline with a little bit of Vaseline just so that she doesn't get super stained. A little tidbit if you have makeup in your kit or at your station, that's always helpful for your clients too. So I'm just going around her hairline and just outlining that. You wanna make sure you don't get it on their actual hair because then the product isn't gonna stick. You don't wanna mix your formula until you're ready just because it's gonna oxidize, it's not gonna be as powerful. So you wanna make sure you're ready with your client before you mix your formula. I'm starting out at her part, and I like to start out on the part just so that gets the most coverage. Now, like I was saying before, if you wanna play with the formula you're using, you can totally do that. Let's say you have a blonde client and they wanna be a little bit more dimensional, more lived in. You could totally do a root shadow versus what I'm doing is more of like a single process. And that's just gonna give them more of that lived in feel, soften their highlight grow out. And for that, I would use L'Oreal Dia Light or Dia Color. Dia Light's gonna be a little bit softer, and then Dia Color is gonna be a little bit more full coverage. Right now it's winter, and I feel like a lot of blondes have been coming in and just wanting to feel a little more dimensional, darker, but that can also be a scary thing for blondes. So you wanna make sure that you're giving your client what they want while also making it easier for you in the long run, because you can give them what they want now, but in 3 months when they come back for their next appointment, maybe that might not be what they want. But that's the beautiful thing about color, is that you can really play around with it. It's super customizable. Okay, so I'm just doing one quadrant right now, and I like to start from the bottom up. I just think it's the cleanest, it's the easiest. I just outlined my section, and now I'm just dragging it on her root. You wanna take thin sections so that you get even application. And I'm using a wide brush just because it has more surface area. If you were doing more of a detailed root, then you can use a smaller brush, but this just, it gets the job done. Again, time is money, and you kind of wanna be quick with your services. That way you can make the most out of your day. I like to do both sides of the hair so that I know I'm getting enough coverage. This is just your standard single process application, but then I'm gonna show you my low light technique, which really adds dimension, and that's what's gonna set you apart from the hairstylist down the road. Now, if you were doing gray coverage, you would also play with your formula and do something a little bit different. I typically like to start in the front for my gray coverage just so that I know all the grays are gonna be fully covered. Grays are typically the most resistant and the most prominent in the front, so you wanna make sure you get those guys first. I just applied the root application. This is your typical standard single process. You wanna make sure that the root is fully covered, and then what I like to do is use a wide tooth comb just to drag that down and make sure everything is nice and blended. So now I'm gonna go through on a diagonal back, and this is gonna create softness, more of that blend, and just be super pretty. If you wanna put a foil here, that way your color doesn't transfer, I would definitely recommend that. And I'm taking a diagonal back. I just like to comb it through a little bit. Now we're gonna place our lowlights. I like to do a mix of chunky and a mix of fine lowlights just to give it some dimension, some interest. So I'm using a foil. If you wanna use cotton, you can. You can also use styrofoam. Anything will work just to separate it. And now I'm just dragging the same formula throughout. And this part is also super customizable. So if you want to leave the ends out to give it a pop, you can totally do that. I'm just adding a few lowlights in here and there, taking about like an inch section in between. This section, I'm gonna paint it on a diagonal, and I'm just gonna leave some of the ends out. This is more of like a reverse balayage technique. I'm keeping some of that brightness towards the front and dragging our root color down throughout the back. This isn't a highlight or anything. We can really just use the foils to separate. We don't really have to take time to fold the foils or anything because it's not processing like a highlight would, which is good because that means it just takes less time. So again, I'm just going through taking a few weaves here and there. I'm just gonna comb this down. And then I like to take more of a chunky weave. And now I'm just gonna drag the root and connect the root to the mids. Kind of feathering it down. This is gonna create a super like lived in natural effect that is just like super effortless. And then let's say your client was super blondie blonde and she wants to transition into more of that lived in. You would want to pay attention to the product choices that you're using. So I'm using McJury to lift and deposit. I would recommend something a little different. L'Oreal has a huge portfolio, so you can kind of play around with that. If I were breaking up a traditional highlight, I would use DLA as their root shadow and low light because that's acidic, that'll help close down the cuticle and add a nice shine, but it also won't be too heavy on the hair. And too heavy, I mean, once they want to go back blonde, it will be easier for you. You also want to think about filling their hair if they are super blonde. So if their natural is a level 6, but they're a level 10, you might not want to put just a 6N on. You might want to add a little gold in it, just to fill it a little so it's not super flat. And some of these pieces I'm leaving the ends out, some of them I'm dragging them through, just to add a little element of interest, break up some of that solid color. And this is my last section. Once I get closer to the top, I like to take a little bit of a finer weave. That way I'm still keeping more brightness towards the top, because that's what your client's gonna see. You wanna create that depth underneath the hair, and that's what's gonna give you a solid base. And then once you get towards the crown, towards the top of the head, do a little bit of a finer section and keep more brightness. And then I just like to keep a little bit of hair on top as a veil, kind of like a safety net just in case. And that's it. I did the root, I added, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5 low lights in the back of the head. And then she's gonna process for the full processing time, which for McJury is 35 minutes. And then I'm gonna pull it and I'll tell you about the global gloss that we're gonna do in just a minute. So it's been 35 minutes, Lauren's root is fully processed. Her lowlights look really good, great coverage. So I'm gonna take all the foils out, gonna give a good shampoo, and then we're gonna see what we're working with. This is always the best part. Clients love being at the bowl, especially because we're bougie here and we have a massage chair, her legs are up. We're getting her nice and comfy. So when you're taking these foils out, you wanna be careful because you don't want these darker pieces to sit on your lighter pieces for too long. So I'm just trying to pull as quick as possible so that I can rinse them and get all of that product out. I like to mist the ends first just to get all of that product out. That way when the root is being washed, it's not getting on those ends. So if you're washing out your blondes especially, I like to hold the ends up while I'm going over the root and getting all of that product out. That way nothing is getting on those bright ends. Because remember, we're keeping some of that brightness and using it to our advantage. I'm using the L'Oreal Vitamino Color Spectrum shampoo. This is my favorite, it smells so good. And it's so good for your client's color. It's gonna lock it in, make sure that it stays for as long as possible. Okay, I washed out her single process. I washed out all the color, and now I'm gonna go in. This is gonna be the Global Gloss. You wanna make sure that your client's hair is pretty dry. Go in and towel dry them really well so that the water doesn't dilute what you're putting on them. And now I'm just gonna brush her hair out to see what we're working with. So I just like to part them at their natural to see how it's looking. I can see that her root is beautiful red. I can see some of those dimensional lowlights that we put in. Once you see the hair, that's when I like to go in and formulate what we're gonna do. You don't really wanna do it too much before, because let's say you're pulling and it doesn't look like how you think, then you already mixed up the color and you're wasting product. So just go in and kind of see what you're working with first. Okay, so for Lauren's all over gloss, I'm doing 664 and a little bit of 8.3. You want to drop her lighter pieces a little bit, but still keeping some dimension and some brighter pieces. So we don't want to go too dark, more of like a tone on tone. And since she was more of a copper before and we're going a little more red, I added that 664 to deepen her a little bit. So the way I like to do my glosses is I like to put it on all over the root first and then go in on the ends. That way we know we're getting all the coverage we need. Now if you were to do this on a blonde, probably do the front last, just because that's going to be overly porous and it's going to process the quickest. But she has pretty even porosity throughout, so I'm just going to put it all over. Now, Dia-Lite processes super quick. It's a 2 to 20 minute processing time, so you kind of want to be quick with it. And I typically eyeball it. If you're leaving it on for the full 20 minutes, you also want to formulate for that accordingly. So I used a 9 volume developer, so that's going to be standard for deposit. If you were to use 15, it would deposit a little stronger, a little quicker, but I'm really just looking for standard deposit. Nothing too crazy. We just want to give her lighter pieces some more tone and just that beautiful shine that Dia-Lite gives. So once I put it on the root, I just like to brush it through, similar like I did for my single process. I'm just brushing it through so that I know it's all evenly distributed. And then I'm gonna start putting it on her ends. And I love Dia-Lite because you can see how shiny it is just from the look of it. It's ultra conditioning. The clients literally say it feels like conditioner going on their hair. And then again, brushing is gonna be the key for even distribution. You wanna make sure everything is brushed through. That way there's no patchy spots. Sometimes what I like to do too, to make sure that the interior of her hair is nice and coated with the gloss, is I'll just take it in my hand and then break it through the mids, just so that I know there's enough product on all of her hair. So for Dia-Lite and for my glosses, I kind of just like to eyeball it, since it is such a quick processing time. I'll just see how it sits, how it's looking. The longer it sits, the more it's gonna process until that 20 minutes is up. Okay, we glossed her, blew her out, and now for the final reveal. So I let the gloss sit on for like 10-15 minutes so that it could develop. We got all the pigmentation we needed, and now we're gonna have the grand reveal, see what it looks like. Let's see how she looks. Stunning! I love it. It looks so good. You can kind of see the lowlights going through her mids and her ends because we dragged it through. And the root is nice and juicy from that L'Oreal Majorelle. Her ends are shiny from the Dia-Lite, and it just has rich pigmentation, absolutely stunning. The next process for your client would be the single process and global gloss. That'll just touch up the roots when it grows out, and then the global gloss will be the all over shine for that pigmentation and high glossy hair that everyone wants. This is a dimensional tint, a dimensional single process, however you want to call it. Basically, the technique of what we did today was breaking up any solid bits of hair that she has and just adding dimension throughout, because no one wants flat, lifeless hair. This hair, literally, it speaks, it has character, it has all the good things, and you're gonna offer your client something new that they haven't seen before. You can use each segment that we did, either the single process, the low light, the gloss, as it is, or together, however you want to fully customize it to your client. but I hope you enjoyed this technique and I hope you guys get to use it behind your chair. Let me know what you think, and thank you so much for landing with me.